Let me know when we're good to go.
Okay, let's go.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back after the August break. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 1:03 p.m. and begin by acknowledging with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish, whose people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Leloham, Bowen Islands. So welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting of Monday, September 9th, 2024. And thank you for joining either in person or online. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. And as I always do, I would like to introduce the other elected members of our council joining us here today. Starting on my right, we have Councillor Islands trustee Sue Ellen Fast. To her left is Councillor Islands trustee Judy Getty. To my far left is Councillor John Saunders. To his right is Councillor Tim Wake. And to his right is Councillor Allison Morse. We are also joined by members of our professional staff team here this afternoon, including our new Chief Administrative Officer, who you'll be hearing from in a few minutes, Kern Dillon, as well as our Corporate Officer, Sophie Insigne. Oh yes, and Councillor Alex Jurgensen, who is joining us online, who may be visiting the screen from time to time. This meeting is being recorded, and when members of the public speak during the public comments and question and answer period of the meeting, your voice and presence will be included in the permanent recording, which will be available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca, as well as on our YouTube channel, where it is streaming live for the billions who turn into local politics here on Bowen Island. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of the business of local government. We all love our community. We are all passionate about what happens here. I'd encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting with direct comments for council during the public comment and question and answer portion of the meeting to myself. For those following along in the room or online, the agenda and full council package, including the reports for today's meeting, is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca. And with that, we will look for approval of the agenda with one amendment that we remove item 8.2 as there are bylaws being drafted which are not ready. And then I'll also look to the corporate officer for the addition of any late items this afternoon.
Actually, no on table like that.
So with no on-table items, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Unanimously. Moving on to new business, a slight change of the order of our agenda. So new business part one, we have the appointment of our Chief Administrative Officer. There are two recommendations there. Can I have someone move the recommendations, please? Councillor Getty, something read? Yeah, I think so.
Whereas Bowen Island Municipality Officer Employee Indemnification Bylaw 485/2019 provides for the establishment of officer positions for the municipality. And whereas the Chief Administrative Officer is an authorized signatory of the municipality. And whereas council must appoint an approving officer for the subdivision of land under the Land Title Act. Therefore, be it resolved that Kern Dillon is appointed Chief Administrative Officer for Bowen Island Municipality. And that Karen Dillon be added as an authorized signatory for Bowen Island Municipality accounts at the First Credit Union and the Municipal Finance Authority, and that Karen Dillon is appointed approving officer for Bowen Island Municipality.
Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That unsurprisingly carries unanimously. And just some comments on this, throughout the summer, after the news of Liam Edwards' departure from the municipality, council has been engaged in a search for a new Chief Administrative Officer. And through that process, it became clear that Mr. Dillon's experience here providing leadership to the Public Works Department in the town of Sechelt would be an absolute asset. It's been wonderful getting to know him through this process. We welcome him here on his first day of work, thrown into the fire with the council meeting and UBCM coming up next week. So just on behalf of council, we're very happy to have you here and thank you for joining us at Bowen Island. It's a pretty special community and we're looking forward to working with you.
Likewise, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking forward to working with staff and council on all the priorities that need to get done, and also just making Bowen Island a great community. It's already a really good community, but we can always work harder to make things better. And I'm looking forward to the challenge, and I guess that's why I'm jumping into a council agenda on the first day. Thank you.
Welcome.
And with that, we will move into the next item of our agenda, which are public comments. So I will look to our corporate officer for any public comments here today.
So just one registered today, and that there are some folks from Sky Seniors Keeping Young here. Who would like to speak with council.
Who's up?
Were you wanting to?
Are we up now?
Yes, yep,
Oh,
absolutely. Come on up, Ms. Billy.
I think we're here by default. An invitation,
If you need a couple extra chairs, it's great if you can sit at the table, just because it lets the mics pick up in a stable way. Staff can add any additional chairs to the table here.
I think the last time I was here, I said if I sat down, I wouldn't get to get out. We expected Carlos to be here.
She's right there.
Oh, I thought you were going to introduce the topic.
So I've written a staff report and included the contract in the agenda. And I will speak to it when it comes up in the agenda, but for the public to speak, it happens at the start of the meeting during public comments. So just explain.
Well, I'd like to introduce Linda Holmberg, who is our vice president and the liaison person for the Little Blue Cottage, which we call our senior center. And we have been planning for some time to improve the patio, which is in front of the stairs to the cottage. And we had assumed when we asked for the use of the cottage, I guess a year and a half ago, that we would have access to the outside and be able to sit and talk and improve it. And so we decided that we were going to improve it. There is quite a grade and it was grass and didn't have a path up to the stairs except for the paved
Aggregate concrete blocks.
and which weren't particularly safe. And so in the meantime, we managed to put down some fake grass to cover some mud. And so we've been planning this for some time, and all of a sudden we've hit a roadblock. And you can talk about the roadblock now.
Well, I'm not sure it's a roadblock, but
We halfway block.
yes. So just being volunteers for this organization, and we're all senior citizens of Bowen Island residents. And I guess we did not understand the procedure that we would have to go through in order to make this patio happen. We have some wonderful contractors who are going to work for us. And one of them is actually offered his service for free to us. So he has the excavator, and then we're hiring Richard Mayo, who's also a very well-known landscaper, to do the work. So we back up. I've been corresponding with Carla, who says I'm the one that's in charge of the cottage, so to speak. We're very grateful that we were given the loo for the cottage. We've really enjoyed the space. We appreciate that you chose us to have it. But we just would like to improve the grounds because there doesn't seem to be much attention paid to that area. So it's, we're also part of Cove Commons. And as such, I think it would be nice to have a more attractive place to be. Plus, we've had some comments and complaints about our AstroTurf. Understandably, it does look pretty awful. So we're here. I think you've had a copy of this. Monique has been very diligently finding porcelain paver that is very well discounted. And we're going to use the materials that, excuse me, the procedure to install these the way the manufacturer advises us to. And there's not going to be any sand or gravel exposed. And we will watch for any of the pipe that might be underground. We're all insured, I believe, so.
Yes, we are insured. And we're just confused about having to sign another agreement because we assumed that we would be able to use the outside because one has to, go outside to get in outside the cottage and come back in. So, and also I remember when I did my presentation asking for the cottage, I mentioned that we would like to, use the outside for perhaps bocce balls. That's not possible because there are all sorts of divots and it's very uneven ground, but we would like to, be able to sit outside and enjoy the view and not on muddy ground or on temporary AstroTurf, which I donated. And so, yeah, we're confused about this contract that we are being required to sign.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for coming today. I'm glad to hear that the space is serving you well and that you are enjoying it. The nature of how would I put this? Being a municipality, even though we're small, we're still a layer of government. So there are always lots of I's to dot and T's to cross. I noticed that later on in our agenda 9.4 here, we do have the collaborative project service agreement on the agenda with a recommendation from staff. So look forward to discussing it with council at that point. I know that Councillor Getty had her hand up for a question or clarifying question or a point of information from our commenters.
Point of information, I'm not sure if it's yourselves or possibly Director Skews, but I was wondering, I've been in the back and yours, even with the AstroTurf, it's so much of an improvement over the camping that was there a couple of years ago. But there's a little bit of difficulty getting up to the existing patio. And has there anything in the plans with respect to access to help that?
Yes,
And okay, good. And is there anything, I didn't see anything with respect to railings or any kind of assistance in terms of people with mobility problems having to hold on to something while they're changing a grade. So is that kind of detail included?
no, that wasn't included in
All right.
this stage of the improvement. But certainly it would be.
And I've been in a couple of times and it's quite interesting and welcoming and we've always got it full crowd. So it's a tiny place, but it's well used. Congratulations.
Something that I didn't report is that we're using grant money of our own to do this work. So if the municipality would like to see a railing there, then perhaps you'd like to do it for us.
Absolutely, conversation we can have in the future as it moves forward. Yes, last question. Then I'd like to
Just for clarification, my understanding from reading the staff report is that there's a path plan to connect the grass area to the existing pathway. So that would be a fairly gentle grade, I'm assuming.
We're hoping.
Thanks
Thanks for being here today. I appreciate you having the time.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 4.1, which is a delegation from Owen Plowman at the Bowen Island Conservancy.
See, good afternoon, everyone. As Mayor Leonard said, I'm Owen Plowman. I'm the president of the Bowen Conservancy, and I'm here to give you the first annual update on the memorandum of understanding which was signed about a year ago between the Conservancy and the municipality. There is information in your agenda package. I sent some slides in. You can look at those. I always say that Winston Churchill didn't have slides and PowerPoints to help him, and he made his point. So I'll see if I can be as effective. First thing I want to say is thank you very much. As this has nothing to do with the MOU, I do have to thank you formally for the grant that you provided to us earlier this summer of $3,500. The funds are for use to print our next publication, which is about Deep Bay, Mannion Bay, Quilacum. And if you recall, about 5 years ago, we published a marine atlas of Bowen Island, which you can buy at the Hearth gift shop and at Phoenix, where you can order it from us directly. This is a follow-on publication zeroing in on the Deep Bay area, and it will be in the same format as the prior publication, which is in its third printing now. So we're very excited. This is going to be published this fall, and it'll be available in early October, late September. So if you want to order some for Christmas gifts, let us know in September, or you'll be able to get them at Christmas craft. Or anyway, it's very kind of you to provide us with the grant because it enables us to get this thing published. We didn't get any other, as far as I recall, we didn't get any other funding. So we've been funding the whole development of this, images, artwork, and so on from our own funds. Sorry, I'm a bit, I have what my family always call is a weak chest, and I'm finding it really smoky. So you'll hear me coughing and spluttering. I'm not sick. It's just the smoke is really bothering me that's around. The memorandum of understanding was signed in September of 2023. My slides say September 24, but it was actually last year for an initial 5-year period, which is then renewable, I think, for terms of 1 year. Or as we decide. And the purpose of that memorandum of understanding is to establish a framework for collaboration and cooperation between the municipality and the Conservancy related to conservation of the environment of the place that we love and where we live. And part of the MOU stipulates that there's supposed to be an annual update. So that's why I'm here today. There's also supposed to be an annual review. So I have to come in and have an appointment and sit down with various members of staff and councillors to talk about specific items. But to refresh your memory, the MOU talks specifically about collaboration around things like conservation covenants, developing and managing conservation lands, stewardship of municipal park lands and island trail networks, and subdivision and rezoning applications. Also, it talks about property tax exemptions and says that when it's possible, the municipality will provide such exemptions to the Conservancy. And it also allows for support for a strategic conservation assessment of Bowen Island, which is ongoing and has been happening now. And you may remember, although it seems like a long time ago, I think it was in May or June that Bob Turner came and gave a presentation on what we call the Caring for Nature Initiative, which is the strategic conservation assessment. So I just have a couple of points to say about that. He gave a much more complete presentation. I wanted to talk about what's been going on in the last year since September. First of all, in terms of covenants, we received an ecological gift in the spring for some lands on the island, and we put a covenant on those lands for conservation purposes in favor of the municipality. And we owe a great debt of thanks to Daniel for helping us to put that in place. He drafted the original covenant. There's also one on the Wild Coast Nature Refuge. Those are held in favor of the municipality, and they ensure that the land is protected for conservation purposes in perpetuity. So it's a generic covenant. Anyway, we put that covenant on the land, and we plan to use that kind of covenant for any further lands that we get. The fact that we received an ecological gift, the Ecological Gifts Program is a program of Environment and Climate Change Canada. So it's a federal government program which provides for tax benefits for donors of land for conservation purposes. So this is the first one that was done on the island. It's a long, long process, paper chase, lots of bits of paper and emails flying back and forth. It's taken 2 years, 18 months to get the ecological gift done. But the government actually fast-tracked all their activities because they were very keen to see an ecological gift on the island, and they really thought that the land was suitable for use as an ecological gift. So that was great for us. In terms of developing and managing conservation lands, we haven't made any requests to the municipality, but we will probably come to you at some point for advice on installing a bike rack at the Wild Coast Nature Refuge at Cape Roger Curtis. I talked to Liam Edwards, Mr. Dillon's predecessor, about being able to source something and getting the best advice on what would be suitable. And he said that could be something you'd help us with. So we'll probably be coming to you to talk about that sometime this fall. Nothing's happened in terms of stewardship of municipal lands and island trail networks. We're always open to hearing, and Claudia Schaefer, who's a member of the Conservative Liaison, the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee, so there's some direct liaison there if necessary. Subdivision and rezoning applications, we completed something before the MOU was put in place, and during the term of the MOU, we provided comment on the CPSA for parking in the multi-use path at Grafton Lake. I can't quite remember what the CPSA stands for, something services agreement, but I can't remember what the CP is. Anyway, we received a request from the municipality. We responded to that request. I think it was from Daniel back to Daniel, so that was taken care of. And then in terms of property tax exemptions, we're extremely grateful for the tax relief at the Wild Coast Nature Refuge. We are funded entirely by donations, and we're a charity, and it's really helpful to have exemptions, especially in light of what we're trying to do, which is to preserve the land for the benefit of all the islanders and visitors. And we've applied for relief on the Ecological Gifts Program's land, so we're hoping that you will be forthcoming with that relief when it comes time to talk about it. The only things I wanted to say about support for our strategic conservation assessment of the island is that it's a multi-year program. It's going to go till at least 2026. It's funded for at least the next 2 years by the Sitka Foundation. We've also received funding from the Knickknack Nook and lots of private donations, which are really being given to us because what we're trying to do is figure out what lands are important on the island and why. If I sort of sum up what's going on, it's like, where are these sensitive portions of the island in ecological terms? Where are the wildlife corridors that are important? What impact would development have on those areas, and so on? We've been liaising already with municipal staff on compiling environmental map data. That was from January to March early this year, and on covenant mapping. So I know we have a big file box of covenant information, and there's stuff going on all the time that's been going on since June and will continue until at least December, and probably longer, to try to come up with mappings of the covenant data, because a lot of stuff you get is just PID and you have no real idea where it is. You have to go to BOMAP and look it up, and you don't know what the covenant is about. And we're trying to come up with a fast way of summarizing that information. Councillors Getty and Foster on the initiative steering committee. We're calling that initiative Caring for Nature. You'll see it's abbreviated to C4N in the material I handed out. So we're very lucky to have their input to help guide our initiative as it goes forward. And then the question is, what's coming in the next year up to this time in 2025? We are working on at least 2 and maybe 3 additional potential ecological gifts. Other donors have come forward to talk to us. Those are a long way from being finished. We're in an assessment phase for one of them right now, and in another one, we've provided some information to the potential donors, and they're now considering whether they want to move to the next step. So we may come to you and talk about if we get those covenants, if we get those lands, we may come and talk about conservation covenants. Since the last process took about 18 months, it's likely that it will be at least 18 months, so maybe that won't happen the next year. Probably we'll be doing some consultation on amenities at our nature refuge in Cape Roger Curtis. So the bike rack is one thing. There might be some other things that come up. And we're anticipating further engagement with staff through our strategic conservation assessment. Probably in 2025, we're going to be doing some workshops. We're going to be engaging the public and so on. And the question is, what data that we obtain will be useful to feedback to the municipality for its purposes. So that's all up for discussion and it's ongoing as far as I'm aware. And that's really what I wanted to say. Again, thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I'm happy if you have any questions to answer.
Mr. Plowman, I'll look to council for any questions or comments. Okay, no, this is a great update. Thank you for coming and sharing with us.
That's great.
And now moving on to section 5, which is our consent agenda. I will look to council and councillors for any items that you would like to see removed from the consent agenda today. Councillor Saunders?
13.4 and 13.36, please.
Any other councillors wishing to remove items from the consent agenda? Councillor Fast?
13.7, please.
Seeing no further, with those items removed, I'll look for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And starting with 13.4, which is Brent Nielsen regarding Bowen Ferry performance, and 13.36 letters from Bowen Island residents regarding need for improved ferry services. I will turn it over for your disposition, Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. They can both be rolled together. Comments valid for all of those. Just wanted to acknowledge the time and effort that a whole lot of people have made to identify ferry issues. And even more importantly, in many of those letters, people didn't just complain, they provided what I think are potentially useful mitigation efforts, which could be made and probably should be made. Much of it not within our purview. However, it wasn't just a series of complaints about the ferry or people saying, I think we could try this or try that. I guess I want to get across to the constituency and the people of Bowen Island that we here at this table are hearing those concerns and we're doing everything within our somewhat limited jurisdiction to alleviate the issues that have been raised, and we'll continue to do so, and thank them for their efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. And just some follow-up on that piece. I know that we are just outside of our summer here, and ferries this past summer have been the on-time performance has been dismal. That's affected many members of our community, from those seeking to access jobs on the mainland, to folks trying to get back onto the island, to see families and kids and pick them up from daycare. I know I was personally affected by that one myself. And I'm encouraged by the letters that we've received so far. Something that I've been doing is I've collected all of the emails for the various both BC Ferries, but as well as the regulatory authorities like authority, the commissioner, as well as the Minister of Transportation, and I've as well as our local MLA and all of the candidates that are running in this upcoming election, as I feel that the time is perfectly ripe for the community to really begin making some noise about this. I know that we'll be, as a council, going to UBCM next week. We do have a meeting with the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure at that meeting, the minister responsible for ferries, so we'll be pressing their concerns there. I did have a meeting with the Executive Director of External Relations, as well as the Vice President of Public Affairs at BC Ferries just last week. They reached out to me as a result of the community writing letters. They're listening and taking engagement, although my points to them have been, our asks are straightforward. They're repeatedly simple. We'd like to talk about assured loading. We need to talk about your on-time performance, and then as well taking responsibility for the ferry infrastructure here in the Cove. They've heard that. I know that they will be reaching out to our council to request meetings at UBCM. So BC Ferries is interested, and then, we'll obviously continue to press our provincial counterparts on that. So that, if there's any further discussion, let's get the motion on the table to receive the items. Moved by Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Getty. And then any other discussion on BC Ferries or these items? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Next over to Councillor Fast for item 13.7, which is Jessica Brooks, Ministry of Housing, regarding Bowen Island Municipality Bill 44. Over to you, Councillor Fast.
Thank you. I just wanted to flag with everybody that we have received a response to our April 9th staff request for council's question, which was, did the province consider Bowen's status as the only municipality in the Islands Trust when they developed Bill 44, the housing bill? The answer they've got in here is yes, but I just wanted to let you know that that a response had been received regarding our being part of the Islands Trust. So just for the file.
Councillor Getty for comments.
If I may, the answer is not a very strong yes. It says that Bowen Island is unique among municipalities, given the relationship with the Islands Trust. That's it. So,
Yes, and something about the 5-year update cycle not being feasible for them. Anyway, but I just wanted to flag it. And then I'd like to move that it be received for information.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Fast. Seconded by Councillor Saunders. Any further discussion on this? The only piece I'd add is would presume that this might come up to talk about the housing needs report later on in the agenda today. With that, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Moving on to section 7, business arising from the minutes. 7.1, actions required to dissolve the water system local advisory committees and amend letters patent. We have our Chief Financial Officer, Kristen Watson, here with us today.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the chair to the rest of council. I'm bringing a report. It's a collaborative report drafted by the corporate officer, the deputy corporate officer, and myself. It outlines the next steps required to complete the changes to the water system governance structure. So if you recall, back in July, council adopted an amended bylaw, which amends bylaw 259, which is the requirement to hold annual community information meetings for each of our water systems. So that amended bylaw now enshrines when they will be held, what the content of those meetings will include, and we have those meetings scheduled now for October 8th and 9th of this year. There's 4 separate meetings, one for the 3 West Side water systems, one for Tunstall, one for Cove Bay and Eagle Cliff together, and one for Middle Point. The next step in this process then is to repeal bylaw 258. Bylaw 258 is the bylaw which establishes the local advisory committees. So there is a recommendation in front of council today. Now that we do have the governance, the reporting structure in place through bylaw 259, staff are recommending that council move forward with adopting this new bylaw 665, which will repeal the establishment bylaw for the local area service committees. There is a little second step that is required, just relating to Cove Bay, because it is enshrined in our letters patent that the Cove Bay committee is established, and there's no sunset clause on that committee. So the next recommendation coming from staff is to go forth to the province and request some housekeeping amendments to our letters patent, which will enable the dissolution of the Cove Bay committee. And lastly, there's a recommendation completely unrelated to this process. However, given that amending the letters patent is a big deal, it takes a significantly long time. It's done through order in council at the provincial level.
There are a couple of additional recommendations from staff that we believe should be done through the letters patent at the same time. And they relate to the reference to a similar committee, the establishment of the Snook Cove Sewer Local Management Committee, again, at the letters patent level. We believe that bringing it down to a bylaw level where council can regulate that committee by bylaw and not have to go back to the province anytime they want to make a change to it. We believe that's an efficient change to make at this time too, as well as another committee established within the letters patent, which is the Recreation Committee. Again, our recommendation is to control the terms and conditions of these committees by enshrining them in bylaws. So if you make the changes at the letters patent level, that brings the control back to council, so to set the terms and conditions. So there's quite a few recommendations here, but staff have laid them out, and we believe that those steps should be taken in order to just make the whole process of governance, water governance, and these other committees more efficient and more within the control of council.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Let's look for any questions first and then get the recommendations on the table for a discussion and debate. Councilor Getty.
The only feedback that I've been getting is that the referrals, the meetings with the local, the people in the localities that are interested in the water district, people that are on the committee and people that are interested in the work that the committees do, that, you know, the process that's happened so far is that there's been a meeting with staff, there's been questions raised, then there's another meeting in terms of getting answers and refining things and digging in. And so that the 1-2 hour meeting might not be enough. And that there doesn't appear to be any process in the bylaw in terms of adjourning it and continuing it later, or coming back with more meetings. So is that contemplated as part of this bylaw in terms of the process?
Certainly, the bylaw is established to set a minimum level of engagement. There is nothing that precludes an issue, an emergent issue that needs a meeting or one that needs to extend to a second meeting. There's nothing in the bylaw that would preclude that. And it is our intention to call them intermittently beyond more than one annual one per year. If there's work going on in a local service area or there's an emergent issue that requires public consultation.
Councilor Morse.
An example of that is what's been going on right now with the Blue Water project work. There's the regular lunch and learn sessions where there's updates given and questions answers. The mechanisms that are there and being used in examples now.
Great, and with that, I'll look to council to get either one or both of the recommendations. Mr. Saunders? I think it's enough just to say.
Therefore,
Moved as per the agenda.
maybe read the actual therefore be it resolved part.
The last one.
Got it. Therefore, be resolved, the council direct staff to request an amendment to Bowen Island Municipality Letters Patent to remove section 24.0 reference to the establishment of Parks and Recreation Committee and section
No.
24. That's the wrong one.
Okay,
That's there too.
Yeah, I'll continue with that. 24.2, which establishes a Snug Cove Sewer Local Management Committee.
The second paragraph at the top of that page.
Yeah. I've lost my whereas is therefore resolved the bylaw number 665/2024. Cited as water system specified area advisory committee establishment bylaw number 258/2009. Repeal bylaw number 665 be read a first, second, and third time. And the council direct staff to request amendment to the Bowen Island Municipality Letters Patent to remove section 24.1 reference to the establishment of the Cove Bay Water System Local Management Committee, and the council direct staff to prepare a bylaw to amend the Cove Bay Water System Establishment Bylaw number 9/2000 once amendments to the letters patent are complete.
Moved by Councilor Saunders, seconded by Councilor Wake. Any further discussion on these items? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. And sticking around for 8.1, request for direction to draft permissive tax exemption bylaw for 2025-2027. We have our Chief Financial Officer. Any comments on this or just available for questions?
There was a second, sorry, there was a second recommendation in that which dealt with the letters patent amendments.
Both of those were moved. They just got moved in reverse order.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I missed it. Thank you. Permissive tax exemption. Thank you. Through the chair to council, every year, there is an opportunity for eligible, community organizations to apply for permissive tax exemption. Permissive tax exemption is, the ability for council to remove, a particular property from the taxable roll. The property must conform to several eligibility criteria established within the community charter. There are 2 new lots that are being contemplated adding to the permissive tax exemption bylaw this year. And these are the 2 lots that were newly acquired by the Bowen Island Conservancy. There is going to be a property that is removed from the permissive tax exemption this year, as it'll no longer be eligible, and that's this portion of the property at this location where we run municipal hall out of. As of next year, municipal operations will be moving to municipally owned property across the street. So there will be no compelling reason to exempt this property from taxation any longer. Additionally, there was one other property that came forward for application for permissive tax exemption this year. It's the property out in Cape Roger Curtis where Island Discovery operates their school. It is, on the face of it, a property that would be eligible for exemption. However, it did not meet all of the required elements of the exemption criteria established by the community charter. It is owned by a private entity, for-profit entity, and there is an opportunity for a municipality to exempt a property owned by a private entity, providing they are in partnership with the municipality to deliver a municipal service. And in this case, the property is using privately owned land to deliver a provincially delivered service. The IDLC is run by the Powell River School District. So unfortunately, under that partnership agreement, we did run it by the lawyer too, just to make sure that we were interpreting the law correctly, that there really is no mechanism to provide exemption to that property. So I did inform the applicant of that unfortunate situation. So this year, there's a schedule I've put together for council consideration for the properties to be included for the permissive tax exemption bylaw. It must come before council and be approved before October 31st, and it does require statutory advertising notice in the undercurrent before the bylaw is adopted by council. Our permissive tax exemption requires that the value of the permissive tax exemptions be less than 1.5% of the previous year's property tax levy. So the proposed exemptions of the municipal value of the exemptions for the properties comes to just over 80,000. So that's well within the cap. The limit prescribed by the cap would be 123,000. So with that, I'll leave it for council. Staff are seeking direction to go forward and draft a bylaw that includes all of the properties on the attached schedule.
Thank you. Oh, lots of hands. So Councillor Jurgensen, followed by Councillor Getty and Councillor Back. Go ahead, Councillor Jurgensen.
Sorry, I had actually raised it earlier about the previous item.
Oh, I am so sorry I missed that.
That's okay.
Councillor Getty.
The list includes Island Pacific Schools, so I would assume that there is it a different school district that distinguishes them?
No, but it's owned by a not-for-profit. It's the ownership of the for-profit.
If there was a change to the West Van School District, which covers Bowen Island? No?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Fast.
There was a name on here, there was a name that wasn't there that I was expecting to be there. And I'm reluctant to, well, anyway, Snug Cove House. I'm wondering if they have applied? Jerry?
The other piece that enables applicant to apply and be exempt from tax is that they're using their asset to deliver their service. So until they begin construction and that moves forward.
Got it, thank you very
then-
much.
Yeah, then we have to just hold off. They could apply for a grant through the community grants project, and I know they have done that in prior years.
Thank you.
See no further questions. I'll look for council to put the recommendation on the floor. Councillor Morse.
That I move that council direct the chief financial officer to draft a permissive tax exemption bylaw to be effective for 3 years, 2025 to 2027, which includes the eligible properties outlined in attachment 1 of the report.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Getty. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
You're now unmuted.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. And Councillor Jurgensen, just because I've been away for 5 weeks and haven't had a meeting, if I do miss you there on the screen, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in to let me know.
You're now unmuted.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 8.3, as we didn't number it, it's 1034 Miller Road, rezoning land use amendment bylaw number 652, 2024. We have Drew Backen, our Island Community Planner, joining us here today.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report is to return to Council with the results of the referrals to the Islands Trust Executive Council and to present the bylaw for second and third reading. At the July 8th, 2024 regular council meeting, Council gave first reading to bylaw number 652, 2024, and adopted a motion to refer the bylaw and Islands Trust policy statement to the Islands Trust and to return with the results. So the Executive Committee of the Islands Trust met on July 24th, 2024. To consider the request for decision on bylaw 652. They stated the bylaw is not contrary to or at variance with the Islands Trust policy statement. And with no issues identified in this round of referrals and no concerns raised by the public at any point, staff recommends that council grants second and third reading to bylaw 652.
Thank you. Questions from the planner? Seeing none, can I have someone move the recommendation, please? Councillor Getty?
Red?
Yes, although
Bylaw number 652, 2024, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use Bylaw number 57, 2002, amendment bylaw number 652, 2024. You read a second and third time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Fast. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hands. Say aye.
You're now unmuted.
And that carries unanimously. Continuing here with you, Mr. Backen, we have 9.1 introduction to an application for a development variance permit for 1600 Barton Road.
Mayor and Council. This report is to introduce a development variance permit application to request a reduction of the minimum setback required from the natural boundary of the sea. So the applicant has proposed to vary that setback by reducing it from 30 meters to down to 23.11 meters for a new detached secondary suite, and also from 30 meters down to 18.85 meters for a attached deck attached to that suite. Setbacks from the natural boundary of the sea are typically required in order to maintain Bowen's natural shoreline, which is more vegetated and less developed than typical waterfront developments in neighboring regions like West Vancouver. The standard 30-meter setback from the natural boundary of the sea ensures that less clearing of waterfront trees occurs, and also that erosion on steep waterfront lands is naturally prevented as the soils are retained by the roots of trees. The proposed location for the detached secondary suite was chosen based on its central location on the property and its proximity to the principal residence, while also preserving the existing driveway to the residence. And I'll also note I was zoomed in site plan and zoomed out, so there's the zoomed out one. If the variance were not approved, the proposed suite would have to be relocated outside of that 30-meter setback area. To move the building directly south would block the driveway to the residence and possibly the garage entrance as well. Possibly move to the southwest would work, but that would, maybe avoid the setback areas in the driveway, but that would put it in a, put it off the level area of the property onto a downslope downslope area of the property. And just also noted that the proposed location for the detached suite is in a cleared area of the property and doesn't require removal of trees and foliage, but to be honest, looking a bit further, it does look like that area was possibly cleared in recent years. So notices of the proposed variance were mailed to neighbors within 100 meters of the property and posted in the undercurrent and online. No responses were received. Staff recommends that council directs staff to give notice for consideration of DVP 2024-0133 at the October 15th, 2024 meeting of council.
Thank you. Councillor Fast, followed by Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about reducing setbacks to the sea for one property owner. What impact does that have on the setbacks to the sea for the neighboring properties?
We do have, I guess there's a clause of that setback requirement under a land use bylaw that allows a reduced setback if one can show that their neighbors have a lesser setback than the requirement, usually based on historical buildings and that. Then that middle property is allowed. It's basically you would take the average of the neighboring properties and be able to build to that as long as it wasn't less than half the required, so no less than 15. But yeah, so this could allow a lesser average for neighboring property.
Yeah, thank you. My concern is that by allowing where alternatives exist, by allowing variances to our island-wide 30-meter setback, that we allow the setback to creep incrementally down the slope, DVP by, development variance permit by development variance permit. Because each time council permits a variance, so that construction, it's not always vegetation, but construction is allowed closer to the sea. Over time, the averages reduce until the buildings over time can walk right down, the permissions can walk right down to the 15-meter mark or whatever it is. And so because I guess that's my question. I'm starting to get into my why I'm not in favor. So I'll just pause for a moment.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Morris.
I was wondering if a site visit was going to be organized.
Councillor Morris, that's correct. Yeah, I haven't visited the property yet, but I'll schedule one in the future for all council.
Thank you. And then I guess I'm just having trouble looking at pictures without, it looks like there's a property to the right of it on your report that's closer to the sea than the existing. It's just hard to figure out where everything is right now. And I understood from reading the report that if there's no variance, they could still build further back, but that would require blasting and more damage to the land than building where they want to be. So I'd like to have a site visit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Wink.
I had similar trouble reading what was going on between the photo and also the drawing. And I can't make out where the driveway is going over to the main residence. So the existing main residence is the one on the left. Actually, can you put the photo up
for the slide that shows all the drawings and things?
That one, I think means.
Oh, okay, sure.
No, the first one, something easy to see.
Oh, It was the blow
That's, what about that? Does that bow map one show the properties?
Well,
Yeah,
Or this,
what's that?
well, this, I
yeah,
guess.
the one on page 104. I'm looking at the one that's actually a map, not,
I think it's maybe the one that's the first page of the variance report, of the variance itself.
right.
Oh, sure.
The actual variance document.
Oh, there we go. That one's there. Oh, one more. Oh, one more, sorry, guys.
There,
One more.
Make it a little bigger.
Sorry, now. Oh, it's a screenshot and the text bubble's in the way. Sorry, guys. Can't really see the neighboring property. Yeah, I can just pull this up on Google Maps. Let's just do that.
What's the one
Sorry.
labeled 1600?
Okay, here we go. This is better. Yeah. Okay. So subject property is here, 1600.
So what's the box that's got the 1600 on it?
That looks like it's labeled right on the garage. So the proposed structure would be right about here, right side of the driveway.
I don't know, just looking at it from here, it looks like it's no closer than the house is.
Yeah, the house, I don't know offhand when that was built, but that doesn't look at all to be meeting the current setback requirements, but probably built before that.
It used to be 70 feet net line.
Oh, okay.
And it's no further than the one that's labeled to the right hand property.
Yeah. Is that on the same property or is that a different property?
That's a different property. That's across the street. That's on 1589 Barton.
I think that would be the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
zip us in a bit here, so I'm gonna look to Council Wake for any questions as you still have the floor.
No, I don't quite get it, but I guess that's the way it is.
Council Getty, followed by Council Fast.
Is this a pre-existing building that needs variance to continue to exist, or is this a new build?
This is a fully new build. This is a proposed building that doesn't exist currently.
So these are plans, this hasn't been built yet.
Correct.
Okay. I haven't seen this map in terms of being able to see things. The one that I've got has the
It's like, well,
Oh, sorry, all right.
the legend right over top of the neighboring properties. So,
Sorry.
that would help. And are these, the neighbors, are they, when did this notice go out for the 100-meter, and are these mostly summer cottages?
I have no knowledge of how long they're living there. In terms of when notices went out, 10 days ago for the mailouts and then about 2 weeks back for the online and newspaper ads.
Okay, do we know that these people have received the notice? It's just gone out in the mail and that's our,
Yeah, definitely gone on. I don't have any knowledge if they were home.
Council Fast.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just, I'm not in favor of giving notice when that we're considering the development variance permit for our island-wide 30-meter bylaw, setback bylaw, when alternatives exist. For example, where the current garage is now, I'm not convinced that the public benefit of a maintained setback from the sea is worth more to the community than this private property owner being able to continue to use their garage in its current state. And also, there are other areas on this big property that could potentially have a secondary suite. And it seems that there's alternatives, so I'm not sure why we would consider a development variance permit for that. I think we need to uphold our bylaws. I think our being an island, our Shorelines are really important, and as staff have confirmed, by allowing buildings to move, by permitting buildings to reduce the setback, you also allow neighboring buildings to reduce the setback. So I'm not in favor, and secondarily, if council votes to give the notice, I'm wondering if within 100 meters in the second part of the motion, these are big properties, and I'm wondering if staff can tell me how many properties would be within the 1 meter bubble that would receive notice. Do you know?
You're asking how many we notified within that 100 meter? Can't think of,
Approximately.
I can actually first kind of count.
Okay.
Let's see. So Red Star is there, yeah, one.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. You had it in there and I missed it.
That's okay, yeah.
My
11
apologies.
11 properties got that. So
Yeah. Okay, never mind. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Would this type of DVP be eligible, like this type of setback, DVP be eligible to go in front of the Board of Variance?
Essentially, yes. They have to deem what's considered a minor variance, but we haven't defined that. They ought to be up to them to determine.
Okay, so it could be considered a minor variance. And if there was a hardship case, they could take it there.
Yeah, possible, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, and then I'll look for a disposition on this before we start.
My
going around in circles.
understanding is if it's a DVP that we grant, it gets registered on title. Whereas if it's a DVP granted by the Board of Variance, it doesn't get registered on title.
That's right.
Yeah, so anybody wanting this kind of a variance would want to go with council.
Okay, I will look to council for disposition on this item.
I press C and
Sorry, Mayor Leonard.
Councillor Morris?
Okay, where am
use
I?
audio.
Is it 9.1 we're dealing with?
Yep.
I move that notice be given that council will be considering the issuance of DVP 2024-0133 for the variance of the minimum setback from the natural boundary of the sea for 1600 Barton Road, legally described as Lot A2, explanatory plan 370, except firstly part subdivided by plan 4660, secondly part subdivided by plan 11533, and thirdly part on explanatory plan 12061 of District Lot 1334, Group 1, New Westminster District. PID 015943372 at the October 15th, 2024 council meeting. And the council authorized staff to give notice for the consideration of issuance of development variance permit DVP 2024-0133 in accordance with section 499 of the Local Government Act to all properties within 100 meters of the legal boundary of 1600 Barton Road, legally described as Lot A2, explanatory plan 370, etc.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Now for debate and discussion, Councillor Jurgensen, I see your hand raised.
Press C and
All right, so I think that it is worth moving forward with the notice because we don't
Cannot
have.
hear you, however.
Oh, hello?
audio now
Speaker
muted.
muted.
You must mute.
Hello? Are you able to hear me now?
Hand lowered.
Not sure what's going on, Councillor Jurgensen. We can't hear you here in council chambers. So we'll move on. I'll look for other debate. Over to you, Councillor Wake.
I agree with Councillor Fast's comments that I think we've got to be very careful about creep on setbacks. And I'm not convinced that there are no other options on this site. So I would feel more comfortable if we could have a site visit before we started considering it.
Well, this is just,
Yes, yeah,
this is
it's
just
just,
giving notice to the community that, and then we'll go have the site visit and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
So this is not granting any variance. That's a long way off.
Thank you for that, Councillor Morse. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, Councillor Fast.
I have one more question. Seeing as how we're talking about the creep on setbacks and the possibility of reductions of setbacks for neighboring properties, could the neighbors who are being consulted here through this notice be given, could they anticipate that their properties might also receive reductions to the C? I'm just concerned that that there could be some different interests here.
Council Best, yeah, possible they might see it as a precedence and want to apply that as well. So there's kind of two possibilities there. You know, some might wish to apply for the variance, or alternatively, there's kind of a separate issue that we talked about that's with the averaging. When someone's able to prove that their neighbors have the lesser setback and that they get the average, that doesn't even require a variance in that case. Yeah, so two kind of different situations there, but yeah, both possible.
Thank you, Councillor Fast.
Sorry, I just wanted to add some context for Councillor Fast's question. Just to note that the existing house on the property is within the 30-meter setback, has an average setback of about 24 meters. What's being requested here is to go to 23 for the detached secondary suite. Our land use bylaw reduces the setback based on the primary building. It's called a primary dwelling. So it would typically be an existing single-family house. When that would change, I guess, if this was built at 23 meters and the existing house was demolished, then it would become a primary house. But it would be, its average is 1 meter closer to this house, so it would mean that the neighbor on the other side would potentially have half a meter that they could be closer than they could as the property currently stands. So it could have some impact, but it's not, it would be a significant so that happens here.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. And Councillor Jurgensen, let's give you a try again.
Press C and
All right, are you able to hear me now?
looks like you're done talking.
Hello?
Zoom us.
Still can't hear you in the room, although I did get a notification from somebody that they can hear you in the stream. So I think the corporate officer is just doing some tech troubleshooting. So I'll do my best to come back to you, or if you've got a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. I can ask it on your behalf. Councillor Saunders.
Just want to respond very briefly to Councillor Fast's comment, which I understand the concern with creep and but wondering about the motivations of the neighbors and when they're getting queried about this, when they get the notification. Not our job to try and understand the motivations of people when they want to make a decision or when they want to answer a question from anybody else. So, you know, we can't determine what that is, and they're going to answer the way they choose to.
Councillor Saunders. Seeing no further questions or comments, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. All
Sorry,
opposed.
Leonard, I do have Councillor Jurgensen's question here in the chat.
Sure.
He agrees that it's important to see the site to determine next steps.
So Councillor Jurgensen's question is, if we vote this down, can we still do a site visit? I see Mr. Martin saying.
If council rejects the application, then we wouldn't schedule a site visit. There'd be no active application for council. Versus if council proceeds with giving notice or defers consideration of giving notice to a future meeting, then we could schedule a site visit and then council could again debate the variance.
And my rationale, so I will be supporting this motion because it is a motion to give notice. I think my encouragement when this comes back to council is there seems to be just based on the maps that are in the report, I think council would probably like to either see things on the ground or have a better sense of where things lie on the existing property, as well as the neighboring properties, to get a sense of what's happening in the neighborhood. So I would like to see that when it comes back. And then I'd also like to have a site visit just to better understand what's happening here and leave the main discussion, the actual decision on this and whether it needs to go to board of variance or whether we approve it or not to that meeting when we actually seek to make a decision. Councillor Getty.
I think I'm gonna be voting against this on the principle that, I think that the 30 meters from the sea is important and in some ways minimal, and this is moving, less than 11 meters away from the sea, as far as I can tell. So it's, encroaching quite a bit. And I think that if there's options that, even with a site visit, I'm not sure that at this point, am interested in building up their hopes. And so I think that the principles of the setback are important and they've got some options, so I'm voting against it.
Yes, Councillor Morris.
I really think we should be having a site visit before we decide to check it out, because we don't really know what the options are without looking at it. I've looked at the contour maps. And, you want to do a bunch of blasting and nuke the property, or do you want to settle something that's not going to be very visible from the water in a flat spot?
Thank you.
And we need housing.
And with that, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, raise your hand, say nay. And the motion carries with Councillor Fast and Councillor Getty in opposition. And I'm registering your agree in the affirmative, Councillor Ferguson. Moving on to 9.2. Thank you, Mr. Backen. We have the interim housing needs report, initial findings, our manager of planning and development.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Today, a report that presents results of housing need projections to populate an interim housing needs report for Bowen Island. So Bill 44 that was adopted by the province in the last fall stated that, the words here are important, but that local governments must complete an interim housing needs report by January 1st, 2025 to include the 5-year and 20-year number of housing units. Then municipalities must then update their official community plan and zoning bylaws by December 31st, 2025 to accommodate the identified number of housing units. In June, the province released the methods that were required for the housing needs report. And so essentially there are 6 different components that need to be calculated to come up with this housing need projection. I won't, maybe I'll save discussion of going into the details for some of the recommended committees unless council has particular interest, but Metro Vancouver Housing volunteered to undertake this work for Bowen Island Municipality and other member jurisdictions, and we took them up on that offer. And they calculated the numbers for us. The province had set up the methods so that essentially you could calculate them using publicly available data. They worked with UBC to create an online calculator so that anybody can do the numbers quite simply. It doesn't take like an expensive consultant to come up with the numbers, but you're using accessible data and essentially a template and a calculation that they've provided. And so I pulled up here the 20-year housing need that was the result of this projection. And it says that over the next 20 years, Bowen has a projected housing need of 1,393 new units. And the 5-year is roughly a quarter of that. It ends up being slightly higher because some of the components, the province says that you need to anticipate providing that housing more quickly, like for persons experiencing homelessness, that a 20-year projection wasn't sufficient. But this is the number that's relevant for the OCP and zoning bylaw. It's the 20-year housing projection. I'll say that the way that then fulfilling the requirement of meeting that is not that Bowen Island build 1,393 housing units in the next 20 years, but that we can determine by December that our OCP has the capacity to provide 1,393 units in it, and then following that our zoning bylaw provide the capacity for that number of units. So the next step that Bowen staff did is we undertook work to look at what is the current OCP capacity within our current OCP, so within our 2011 OCP, and we looked at 3 different sources of that. So we looked at vacant residential properties, taking data from BC assessment to look at which properties are vacant, and there's a map in your an attachment. So 287 vacant residential properties in Bowen. We looked at unused units within existing CV zones. So this is the majority of this is within the Grafton Lake development and also Seymour Bay, the County Point CD zone, but 350 additional units. And then doing calculation based on OCP designations of properties that could be subdivided if their zoning is at the OCP levels. And we found 685 additional lots that were potential within Bowen's existing OCP. And then in consultation with the province, we then based our calculation that each of those additional lots could build a primary and a secondary housing unit on them. So a house and a detached or attached secondary suite. So the total then we found was that there were 2008 units of housing, just the provincial term, could be built under Bowen's 2011 OCP. So based on that, we would, when we complete the housing needs report, we'd be informing the province that our current OCP contains sufficient housing that would meet the requirements of Bill 44. Going by step, we would still need to determine capacity of the land use bylaw and what changes would be required prior to December 31st, 2025. I know we've had discussions with the Housing Advisory Committee already about some of the additional tools that the province has provided to municipalities in making that change. And it's something we'd probably as well wanting to work with the OCP review process. So the timing of it gets a bit funny, but we would know that by December of 2025, in our timeline, we wouldn't necessarily have an adopted new OCP, but we would have probably some direction in that and trying to help inform those zoning changes that would have to take place by the end of December. And so we have that work slated for 2025. So the recommendation from this report is to refer this report to the OCP Steering Committee, the Advisory Planning Commission, and the Housing Advisory Committee, and then to direct staff to prepare an interim housing needs report to fulfill provincial requirements.
Mr. Martin. Big work. That was a great report to read and very illuminating. I'll look to council for any questions or comments that they may have. Our manager of planning. Council.
I found that report a little bit mind-boggling. But I understand the methodology to create the templates. It seems to me it's based on population generation numbers that are for the region rather than for Bowen Island itself. So I just wonder how relevant they are. Not that it matters, because it looks like, by using that data, we meet the objective there. But I'm thinking about actually housing that we might want to produce, and there's nothing in here that sort of accounts for it. It's all based on lots and single family lots. And so what about multifamily units, which is certainly also what we need. So I guess the comment is, I don't find this that helpful in terms of where we go, but I hope we can move past this to try to figure out what our real need is.
Through the mayor, so the H&R methods, they use a mixture. So some of the numbers are based on the region as a whole, and then our share of the region. So some of the message from the province is that if you are a municipality within a regional district, that it's not enough for you to say our growth has always been slow. We're over here, we're fine. It's other places that have, that where the growth should be directed. And essentially their message is that, like, as a member municipality of a region, that there's a certain obligation to take that share of the growth. So for example, the B category there, number of housing units for individuals experiencing homelessness, that's based on the regional homelessness count, and then your population share of the region to generate the number. And essentially the methods guiding document says, some municipalities within a region may have higher levels of homelessness, but that can in part be based on, like, some of their data is based on like shelter beds. And so they're essentially saying municipalities that have built shelter beds have higher levels of homelessness because of the choices they've made to invest in more shelter housing. So therefore, it's almost not fair, or it's not sufficient for municipalities that don't have that level to say, well, we don't have homelessness. It's saying, well, your homelessness in the region has happened in these municipalities that have built it. Yeah, so it's quite a complicated, it's an interesting methodology. But yeah, there's elements of it being a regional basis. And then for your second question about, our guidance for us going forward in our OCP, it is interesting too, because this work that we've done is that, okay, our current OCP meets the numbers that we need. But I do think it's a discussion the OCP steering committee will have and the council through this, like the policy work in OCP, is that does the housing that's being provided for in our OCP, does that meet the goals that we want as Bowen? And that's a separate conversation that I think we would be having regardless of this provincial mandate. This work is just telling us that, going into this, I wasn't clear if the results of it was going to say, we need to have a discussion about what type of housing we want to see on Bowen, and our OCP needs to include 500 more units, which could have been an outcome. And instead of saying, no, it doesn't need to, but we should. So we're free to plan Bowen as we see fit, knowing that if we're not reducing the number of units in the OCP, that we're still compliant with provincial legislation. But it's entirely possible the OCP steering committee, through the engagement we get, says this is the type of housing that actually people in Bowen want and need.
Councilor Getty, followed by Councilor Morris and Councilor Fast.
So I don't have any trouble with the recommendations, and all my questions and comments have to do with the larger discussions in terms of capacity overall and the parts that are missing in terms of this not included in this total is the existing lots that could have secondary suites built, and that's going to increase the number from 2,000 to something else, and then that raises questions in terms of capacity. So, we're safe for the time being. I think we have to, I suppose, keep in mind this 1,300 number in terms of, the 5 and 20 year, as we have to review this every 5 years, I believe.
I believe it's at least every 5 years.
So, that gives us a bit of a reprieve, but I also have questions in terms of what the data is and what the units are, and whether it's people are, if this is a housing thing that's a 3-bedroom or a 6-bedroom house that has X number of people, and how many cars they're going to have and all the rest of it. So, I think that I don't have, as I say, I don't have any trouble with recommendations, and I think we should just have a whole lot more questions for our planning.
Thank you, Councilor Getty. Councilor Morris and Councilor Fast.
I didn't want to add up all the lots that are different colors on this schedule. How many properties could be subdivided? You said how many units they can create your lots, but how many could actually be subdivided?
I don't have my spreadsheet open, so I don't know. I can provide that later.
Doesn't matter. Looking like a fair number.
I think my takeaway too is that there's maybe lots that, if there were OCP levels, one could become 2 or something.
Yeah.
And then in fact, at the 685, a high percentage of that is in maybe like 5 or 10 lots. And you could probably look on a map and be like, oh, these look like they're, quite large ones, is where actually like a large percent of that additional capacity is found.
Thank you. I really appreciated this report. It was good for me as the chair of the previous OCP to go, oh, okay, we were, that it is what I thought it was, and approximately, and then to have the actual data done. This is terrific. I had a question, partly because we're going to UBCM next week, about the bottom of page 125. It says, according to the 2021 census, Bowen had 1,724 occupied private dwellings with 2,036 total dwellings present on the island. None of this could be definitive, general information, but to me, that looks like about 30 vacant dwellings, 300 vacant dwellings currently. And I'm wondering if you can remind me about the, what's it called, vacancy tax or the empty home tax. Are we part of that, or are we outside of that area?
Through the mayor, the empty home tax is Vancouver specific, and then the speculation and vacancy tax, we are outside. It does not apply to Bowen.
Okay. And how about all of our neighbors, or do we know that?
I don't know if I have my memories. It's definitely in like Metro Vancouver, so like West Van, the North Shore. I believe it was extended up to Squamish.
Okay, thank you. It's just, thanks, and I can do some more checking, but I'm just, wondering if we might want to bring up the idea of, asking the province to be included in the speculation and vacancy tax. Is that what you said it was? Because 300 vacant dwellings seems like a lot when I look at, some of the, numbers of houses that we need. And if somebody's sitting on an empty house for the purpose of an investment, it might be something that we might want to ask questions about at UBCM. So we can get to that when we discuss it later on the agenda. Thank you.
That 300 number is the ordinarily occupied number versus not ordinarily occupied. It's the not ordinarily occupied number. So they're not empty, they're used, but not used 365 days a year.
Through the merit, that's what the number is. It's occupied by usual resident, not occupied by usual resident. So it's if you're living there full time. So that number would include like vacation times or even part-time residents. If somebody has a resident in Bowen and in Vancouver, then for census they have to determine which they normally occupy.
Yeah, great. Okay, so not empty.
So not empty. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, just I've got a couple of comments on this. It's I think like Councillor Wake, these were interesting numbers to take in and what even seemed like some big numbers for Bowen Island when we look at 374 units over 5 years and 1,400 pushing 500, 1,500 units in 20 years. And my comments generally, not necessarily to the planner, but also to council as we go into UBCM is that I feel as if the province has some more work to do to translate this into actual on the ground housing. So it's one thing to say that, okay, our housing needs report says that we need to build this many houses. However, what we're seeing in our neighboring jurisdictions and from other municipalities as well is that it's okay, province, you can set a housing target, but there's a whole bunch of other things that have to happen that we can't take care of by ourselves to get that housing built. And for us on Bowen, I think that involves connections to water. And, we've got a Snug Cove sewer system that we have no idea how we're going to pay for an upgrade for. We can't densify in our town center until that happens. The connections to public transit. We know that TransLink is beleaguered right now, particularly with their funding from the province. And I would like to see from the province, just as some of my other mayoral colleagues in other jurisdictions are asking for, what is the province's plan to fund infrastructure in municipalities so that we can actually get the housing built? And, within that, there's also a question for me being on an island and being part of the Islands Trust. And particularly as we go through this OCP review and rewrite that is looking at the official community plan through the lens of sustainability. What happens if we can't sustainably build those? What happens if there isn't enough water? What happens if, because of the pressures related to climate change, there are some basic infrastructure pieces that we just can't make happen for that amount of housing? And I believe that, I know that's a question that our Islands trustees have raised and that's working through the trust. But I would like to press the province and see some feedback in our discussions with them about how we're going to take care of the infrastructure, how we're going to take care of the sustainability piece, should it be found that we actually can't sustain that much housing. I do appreciate the pieces on sort of uncovering some of the diversity of housing that's needed. I like the notion of suppressed housing and looking at rental vacancies as well. But I really believe that the province needs to come to the table to fund some of these core infrastructure pieces that we're just not able to take care of by ourselves. With that, I'll look to you, Councillor Getty, to move the recommendation.
That council refer this report to the OCP Steering Committee, the Advisory Planning Commission, and the Housing Advisory Committee for information, and the council direct staff to prepare an interim housing needs report to fulfill provincial requirements.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Any further debate? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries. Thank you, Mr. Martin. Moving on to 9.3, capital projects update. We have our Director of Engineering, as well as our CFO here for this item. All right, Council, over to Mr. Graham.
So this is information report, no recommendations that passed. This was at the mayor's request that we provide a brief overview of capital projects that are underway. So just go over the items, the capital project items that are outlined in the report. So we've trying to get our co-pay plan up and running. The update on that is that we have received the filtration equipment back from Ontario. It's been moved into the building. Our staff are working on reinstalling it this week. I'm waiting for confirmation from Tony Powell, Chief Technology Officer from Purifics, that he'll be able to come next week. He's back in the office tomorrow, so I should get that confirmation then. Because the desire is to have him on site for startup and recommissioning, which will be happening next week. And so we should be on track to have the commissioning steps and all the testing that Vancouver Coastal Health requires before the end of the month, and then get the plant into service. That's the objective, assuming that everything works the way it's supposed to. So that's where we're at with the water treatment plant. Carter Road Bridge has been finished. There's a few minor items to finish, insulating pipe, the water main on the bottom of the bridge. There's a couple of sections that have to be insulated, but for the most part, the bridge is complete and open to the public. So we're happy about that. For the multi-use path, we have been struggling with this next section from the end of the current path at Larson Lane up to Charlie's Lane, mainly due to the terrain, the Terminal Creek Ravine. The first part is off-road and could be constructed. And we have actually tendered the construction of about 300 meters past current end of the path near Artisan Lane. We really do need to get that going because we have a number of grant funding sources for this project, and one of them, the 2023 intake, I believe, of the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Fund is expires in March 2025. So this will enable us to use that money. The rest of the so that's about halfway up to Charlie's Lane. The rest of the way requires really can't be built on the north side of Grafton Road because of the terrain, or can't be built through the ravine. So we do need to realign Grafton Road. That requires some rock removal on the south side of the road, and is requires more funding than we currently have. So we are seeking additional funding to finish that piece. But we should be in a position to proceed with at least part of it in the fall of this year. Moving into the water system projects, we have, of course, tendered a number of water projects together with one tender process. And we've hired NB Contracting. They've given us some schedules, and they're underway with the process of submitting shop drawings and ordering the long lead time items for the Bowen Bay well upgrades and the system interconnection, which is, we've identified that as the highest priority, because that will essentially close the supply demand gap for the Blue Water service area. So some of those long lead time items, such as the electrical cabinets, are underway. Due to the lead time on these items, we're likely not going to be able to finish that project until early 2025. MB's also plans to start exploration work for the Blue water mains next week. And that's primarily to confirm the extent of the bedrock. We have done some scanning and provided that information with the tender documents, but it does need to be confirmed, as well as confirming the tie-in locations. So we're scheduled to start work on the water mains towards the end of this month, September. And that work will extend into May 2025. It's possible it may extend further than that, because we do have quite a number of culverts that are being completed as part of this project. And they really need to be constructed during low flow conditions. So it really depends on how the weather in spring and early summer goes. But hopefully by the end of May, that project will be completed. And they are doing the water main project sequentially. So the Eagle Cliff Cove Bay water main, connecting the two systems, would be proceeding after the completion of the Blue water mains. And that will be hopefully end of May 2025. So we're looking at end of May to November of 2025 for that project. And of course, it wouldn't be completed without having the Cove Bay water treatment plant up and running. We're hopeful that that's far in our rearview mirror by. The other project that we've got underway, at least the permitting and design phase is underway right now, is for the wastewater outfall replacement. So there's the final step in the loan approval's been completed, so we have the money available. We're unfortunately, due to the timeframes associated with the permitting, we're unlikely to be able to start construction on that project until next summer, likely July of 2025, and then looking to complete before the end of next year. Hopefully by November 2025 would be feasible. One aspect that we're not clear on yet, that will be confirmed through the permitting process, is whether this project will trigger the municipal wastewater regulation registration process, which if it does, we could incur some additional costs and delays as a result. I'll let Kristen speak to the community center update.
Thank you. I don't think anybody is pleased to see the community center project drag on beyond this summer. There are continuing project delays, which unfortunately have now pushed the planned occupancy date to mid-October. It's become a situation now that we have asked for regular weekly meetings with management, senior management of Signia, to come and review weekly progress with us. So they have visited the site August 22nd. They were on site last Thursday as well, meeting with us, responding to our concerns. And evidently, we do feel that they are listening and trying to be responsive. And they were quite frank with us that they want to see the end of this project just as badly as we do. So of course, with the fact that it is now over a year overdue, where we are running into some cost overruns, the construction contract itself is progressing and is within budget. We have just, we have not quite spent all of the contingency, but we do have some change orders that are in the pipeline that will probably use up the rest of the contingency on the budget. But where we are looking and have to acknowledge that there are now consulting fees that managing and paying for the architect consultants and the project manager consultants. While there was sufficient contingency in the budget initially to absorb some project delays, every month now that we're continuing with these costs. We need to find additional funding. I do expect that at the end of it, that the final cost will likely be between $200,000 to $300,000 over budget. In the grand scheme of things, that's approximately 1 or 2% of the entire project budget, which is not bad, especially given the construction climate that we're facing these days. We did anticipate probably needing to use about 200,000 or 300,000 of the Growing Communities Fund to fund the additional consulting fees. So they are in our financial plan, but as we gear up for project closeout and moving in and occupancy, I will be able to give you a clear picture of how much of that grant was required to complete construction of the project. Items that are currently under being completed, work on the septic system is recently being completed. They are working hard to complete the interior finishings at the moment. The stairs will be poured very soon, as well as they're now working on the deficiencies that are observed on the roof. Like I said, we're meeting weekly with them. We are holding them very much accountable for any further schedule slippage, because we do have that drop dead date for us of October 31st, where we don't have this building in. So they are aware of our constraints, and it appears that they're working very hard to ensure that that date is accommodated.
Questions, Councillor Saunders?
So, kind of a two-parter here. If the excessive delays that you mentioned are not of our doing, I realize some of them may be. Is there no, first question is, are there no contingencies in the contract to cover the excess costs that are brought about by the delays? And secondly, you said, we're holding them to task on getting this done on time. How are we doing that?
We are holding them to task by being very diligent about requiring explanations for delays, by really being on top of the schedule and asking questions about how any changes or how any decisions made will further impact schedule. The question around delays and additional costs. We are looking at the contract at this point. We want to see the project finished. A contract that would speak to some kind of compensation for delays typically has a section about liquidated damages. So if there are any of those provisions in the contract, once it's finished, then certainly that would be considered.
So do we know if there are liquidated damages as part of this contract?
I don't know that there is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
What would it take you to find me?
Just another review of the contract, I believe.
See, our manager of recreation had her hand up in the background there.
Thank you, if I may. I don't believe that that is a clause in the contract right now. And we've been advised that it's very challenging to get those funds back after the fact. So right now, we're really moving forward with a collaborative nature right now and really all working together to get this done and dig in a little deeper, but I suspect it would be very challenging.
Do we have a holdback? Like, is there a 10% holdback on everything at least?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Wage.
I'd like to shift the discussion back to the multi-use path, if we can. I'm just concerned that when you talk about realigning Grafton Road, that sounds like a huge expense. And the reason we're doing that is because the grade change is to around Charlie's Lane, getting up to Grafton Road at Charlie's Lane is too steep.
No, the reason is that there is not enough space. I mean, that essentially you get to a point where the ravine comes up right up to the edge of Grafton Road. And it's really not feasible to widen on the ravine side. So in order to create enough space for the path, the road needs to be widened on the south side. So it's probably more accurate to say widening the road on the south side than realign. I mean, the center line does shift, but it's essentially adding that 3 meters of space that you need on the south side of the road and using the existing edge of asphalt, that's the edge of path. The existing top of bank.
Okay, and yeah, I guess what I'm thinking about is there was consideration of an alternate route that would follow above the water course and up towards the treatment, the water treatment plant. You go in that way, which would take away the necessity to get that much.
It does, I mean, the section we're talking about now, you need to get by in any case. Even if you were gonna go down and there was a number of reasons why we decided not to go down through Conway Creek, right? But, you need to get past the ravine in either case, whether you're going along Grafton Road. And initially, we did have an alignment that was running down in the ravine off-road. That seemed to be feasible. When we got the geotechnical engineer involved, we had to reevaluate that conclusion.
Thank you. Councilor Morse, followed by Councilor Getty.
Well, I've raised this before. To me, we could build the rest of the path for what it's gonna cost to do these 2 bits. And, you know, we passed something the other day in town, a busy road, and it was very clear. It had a share the road sign up. And so for people to just go slow, knowing it's just up and around that curve, and after that, the bikes will be out of their way and on the path. You know, I think we should make the whole rest of the route safe with the money we're spending on this. I've never been keen on doing that corner. Do the rest first.
And we do intend to advance design work on the rest of the path so that we have.
My point is, for what we're spending on these 2 little bits, we can build a heck of a lot more of the rest of the path.
Thank you, Councilor Morse. Councilor Getty.
With the Carter Bridge, there was some discussion about how there was a pedestrian section that was beside that where the bridge was being built, and that was a request early on from some of the school people in terms of whether or not that could remain. Did that happen?
It's going to be removed. It wasn't built as a permanent structure, and it's also too close to the creek. During high flows, it wouldn't have enough clearance.
Exciting.
It would be gone. It's all.
Each surfing.
Just a community center question is, will taking occupancy happen at the same time as substantial completion, or are those 2 separate?
2 separate things. Substantial completion on the existing schedule at the moment is close to the end of October, so probably 2 weeks after occupancy.
So is the intention to move in prior to achieving substantial completion?
On the schedule, it's scheduled for around the same time as occupancy. However, we don't want to take control of the building until the significant deficiencies that we've identified are remediated, because once you move in, you're positioned to then require the contractor to remediate them or withhold funding from it. Once you move in, things become a lot murkier. So our position is that we are not going to be ready to move in until we feel that any identified deficiencies have been addressed to a place where we're comfortable at.
And supposed to be blunt, given that 100% of the deadlines for this project so far have been missed. The level of confidence from this seat around the end of October.
Yep.
Being firm is in question for me. I'm curious whether there's a contingency plan being addressed should we need to vacate this building and the next one not being ready.
Yeah, it's something that we will need to work on in the next 2 weeks. I think we've noticed that the contractor is more responsive and appears to be putting more resources at the project. They've added a new superintendent to support the existing one. And we are confident at this point that they're going to put the resources in to support the supervision on site to coordinate the trades and get work done.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further questions, I'll look for a motion to receive the report. Moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Saunders. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That carries. Thank you. Moving on to 9.4, a collaborative project service agreement, Seniors Keeping Young landscaping project at Boulevard Cottage. We do have our manager of Environment and Parks Planning here for questions. I know we discussed this a little bit at the start. For the sake of timing, could I have someone put the recommendation on the floor, please? Sir Fast, if you'd like to read that out.
I move that council authorize entering into a collaborative project service agreement with Bowen Island Seniors Keeping Young Society that permits installation of a patio and pathway behind the Boulevard Cottage at 432 Cardina Drive.
Okay, moved by Councillor Fast. Seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion or questions on this item? See, yes, Councillor Fast.
I'll be moving in favor of this motion, voting in favor of this motion because I sit on the library board as liaison, and I checked in with the librarian and learned that not only had there been email consultation with library staff, as is in the report, but there's also been a site visit and a walk around, and that these shared spaces by several groups, including tourism, the library, the Hearth, and Sky, that these collaborations, I think we need to perhaps at some point have a use of grounds policy so that something doesn't spring up or somebody, one of the groups or another group on island doesn't assume that they can put a statue there or something like that. So anyway, at some point, maybe a use of grounds policy might be useful, but for now, this has been the walk around, and the point about underground buried pipes. Some of those were found during the building of the multi-use pathway. We need to check and know what is underneath these things and that things aren't getting paved over that shouldn't be. And it's just good practice, I think, when you've got a shared space to have a process and an agreement. So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Seeing no further questions or comments, I will call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, raise your hand, say nay. And that carries. Any excuse? Moving on to correspondence 10.1, Laura Donovan regarding suicide prevention support for Indigenous children dated July 28th, 2024. Can I have someone move the recommendation, please? Councillor Morse?
I made a slight suggestion to the corporate officer about
Yep.
changing the wording. So that council
provide a letter supporting the efforts of Laura Donovan in advocating for suicide prevention support for Indigenous children.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries unanimously. 11.1, draft minutes of the Environment and Climate Action Committee meeting held July 29th, 2024. There are two recommendations here. Perhaps I can either get the committee manager or the council liaison to speak to this item before council takes it up.
I have a question to do with I mean, I don't have a problem with what's being proposed, but does the Conservancy know we were proposing to give them this donation? Because they've been, Owen Plowman's presentation, he was talking about doing research into bike racks and consulting with the municipality, so I guess I was reading that as they were not sure whether they wanted to have bike racks or have they asked me?
Right, I'll look to staff first, followed by Council Fast.
Through the chair, I haven't informed the Conservancy that the grant was successful because it's not successful until council votes on it. So they did apply a few months ago for the funding for the bike racks and we'll be.
Okay. The way he presented, I sort of got the feeling that they were thinking about it, not necessarily wanting to do it. So good, thank you.
Council Fast.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be happy to move these motions. As I am a liaison on at least one of these committees. I know I sat on a committee meeting with these. Anyway, thank you. I believe that Owen is the chair of a very active board and different board members take on different projects and not only board members, but they've got volunteer groups as well that do some of these projects. And so he may not have the information, but I believe he was asking for advice about suppliers and standards and things like that. So anyway, I'm going to move the motion. Whereas the Sustainable Community Grants Program has previously been, there's a separate part up here, which relates to the change in the local government climate action program. But I'm just going to move these motions as they are. Whereas the Sustainable Community Grants Program has previously been funded by the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program, CAREP, and whereas the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program, CAREP, has been discontinued and replaced with the Local Government Climate Action Program, LGCAP, therefore be it resolved that council allocate a portion of the funds received through the new LGCAP to up to a total of $4,000 annually to continue the Sustainable Community Grants Program. That's about sources of the funds. The second one, I move that council allocate $1,607 to the Bowen Island Conservancy to fund the purchase and installation of bike racks at the Wild Coast Nature Refuge and $1,554 to the Bowen Agricultural Alliance and Bowen Food Resiliency Society to fund food resilience workshops from the Sustainable Community Grants Fund.
Moved by Council Fast, seconded by Council Getty. Any further discussion on these items? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Hughes. Moving on to new business in section 12, update to council on Metro Vancouver business. Not a lot is happening. We did have our first regional parks meeting of the new academic year, I guess, after this break, which happened last week. Not a lot to report back on that. There was a presentation on the investment strategy. Obviously nothing new on Cape Roger Curtis. That is still in a holding pattern as far as open meetings go. TransLink has not met. That will start up later next week. And that's it on Metro Vancouver and TransLink. Well, Metro Vancouver, there is the Council of Council meetings that is happening this Saturday, which all councillors are invited to. I believe the major topics at that meeting are providing information on some of Metro Vancouver's big capital projects that are coming, in particular, some explanations on the North Shore wastewater treatment plant, as well as the upcoming. Seeing no questions, we will move on to probably more exciting updates from our island's trustees, Trustee Getty and Trustee Fast.
Do you want to do TransLink?
There's nothing.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
All right, so trust council quarterly meeting is coming up 2 weeks from now, just after UBCM. And September 24th to 26th. There's a recommendation on with the dark skies principle. I guess we should pull that, which we can, no, it's coming up.
It's right there,
12.3.
yeah.
And this morning there was a governance committee meeting and that went surprisingly well, although it went overtime and it bumped right up against this one, but we've got a big long agenda for September and then we're already planning for December, so it's all happening.
And I gather you are now on the financial planning committee?
Yes.
Yeah.
I asked to go, I have delegated the chair of the governance committee is by definition allowed to be on the financial planning, and I had deferred that and delegated the vice chair. And I asked to go back and be the representative because I wanted more information about to make sure that the financial planning committee knew and understood the funding model for Bowen. And that it not be linked so closely to the Conservancy funding, and that I had assurances from trustee Fast that she would back me up and help me in the parts I didn't understand, so I got another committee.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, and I'll just report and then I'll do that motion that's there. Just wanted to let you know that we had a trust programs committee meeting, and anyway, there's different things going on. And we are going through a whole series of committees of the whole as we as committee of the whole of trust council work on and go through the draft trust policy statement update, which is like the OCP for all the OCPs in the Islands Trust area. So that's being updated to include housing, climate change, and reconciliation topics mostly. And I wanted to draw your attention to 1312 in the information items. I won't go through that here, but it's from the Islands Trust Conservancy, and just the main points in it is that there's a new manager of Islands Trust Conservancy, and Carolyn is her name, and she used to work for them like 30 years ago. And also Islands Trust Conservancy has funded Bowen Island Conservancy with an $8,000 opportunity grant. It's called that because it helps conservancies like the Bowen Island Conservancy acquire other funding, do surveys, get reports, things that normal donors don't want to contribute to. It helps. It's like seed funding. And I want to read the recommendation for that's here in 12.3. And this just relates to Bowen Island already has a dark sky bylaw. Trustee Morrison from one of the Pender Islands wasn't aware of this. So I asked that she add Bowen Island to her list of local trust areas. And I'm going to move because the OCP is underway and our dark sky bylaw is, I think, at least 15 years old, that trust council, that Bowen Council direct staff to notify trustee Morrison of Bowen Island municipality's interest in pursuing further exploration of policy and advocacy options relating to dark sky principles.
Moved by Councillor Fast, seconded by Councillor Diddy. Any discussion on this item? Councillor Morse?
Just a curiosity of process thing. This may or may not take staff time, but I was thinking it would, and in working on new projects, I think we usually discuss at a strategic planning session, so I'm not sure about pushing through with this at this point, rather than referring it to in the next strategic planning session.
I think that's a fair point. My read here right now is that we're just providing a letter of support, and any policy or bylaw work that comes out of that would be certainly referred to strategic planning or arise in strategic planning. I'm seeing some nods from my colleagues here if that's accurate. Councillor Fast?
Yes, and also that Bowen Island has experience with the dark sky bylaw that the other islands don't have, so we can contribute. And I believe this is just at the trustee level as individual trustees volunteering together to share ideas.
See no further question or discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. That carries, thank you. I would love to just put in the ear of our trustees and possibly our representatives from the Housing Advisory Committee as well, that it would be great to talk to some of the trust leadership and collaboration, with both you folks as trustees as well as members of our Housing Advisory Committee, just on notion of these housing needs reports and particularly what's happening in the province and sort of the special jurisdiction of the islands that I think is probably best raised through that body and from my view isn't fully understood through Metro Vancouver as our other regional entity. Yes, Councillor Fest.
At UBCM, Union of BC Municipalities Convention coming up next week. I'm hoping that we can get together with the representatives with the other trustees, because there's some that are coming from Trust Council, the Executive Committee, but there's also a few that are also on regional district boards and things like that. And hopefully we can get together a little bit and just get to know each other's interests, and because we should be having regular annual meetings to define our collaboration.
Okay. And then coming into the home stretch here, section 14 question period. So question period is an opportunity for members of the public to request clarification or ask a follow-up question relating to an item discussed at the meeting. I will look to our corporate officer for anyone online looking to raise questions, or the massive press gallery that we have here in the back of the room. If any of you 36 people would like to ask some pressing questions. Seeing none, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Oh, moved by, who was first?
Missed it.
Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, fantastic. We are
graciously awaited for you, Judy.
Sorry, I know, I was just busy just writing an email to something.
We are now adjourned and we'll come back at 3:15 for our closed